Díomh agus fáilte Ash. You're all very welcome to another episode of Irish in Toronto. Today I'll be speaking with Saz Cartin, who I would refer to as Saz for the remainder of this podcast. Saz moved to Canada the same month as I did, and we became friends through her ex-partner. In this episode, Saz opens up about her initial struggles finding a job here in Toronto and her fractured relationship with alcohol. This episode is being released one day before Saz's 3-year soberversary. She is refreshingly honest about her journey to sobriety, and I admire how she approaches it. Her Instagram page, sackedthesauce, is a wonderful resource for people curious about quitting alcohol. I really appreciate her honesty throughout this chat. Quick trigger warning for people, there will be mentions of alcohol use disorder and disordered eating. I would still encourage people to download the episodes and to share them with friends and family. Downloads are the easiest indicator for me to gauge how many people I'm reaching with these podcasts, so I would really appreciate it. As her lovely wee dog River kept me company throughout the entirety of this chat, I begin the conversation by asking Saz about when she first came to Toronto.
Why did I come to Canada? Jeez, and that's just 6 years ago now. So I moved over to Canada when I was 26. I was actually thinking, because I was like, what age was I like? So yeah, I figured it out. I was 26 and I moved over with my ex-boyfriend, as you know. That's how I know you, which is mad. But yeah, so he had never lived outside of Ireland, like as an adult, and it was something that he really wanted to do. And I guess, you know, in that kind of stage in your 20s where you're like, oh sure, like I didn't really know anything about Canada, but the immigration process seemed pretty straightforward, so I was happy enough to just like go along with it. The only thing was I had a government job. I was working in a prison for young people, and I like loved it, and it was the first time that I felt like I found something that was like, I felt like this is what I'm meant to do. And then of course within like a year or I was there for 2 years actually, but I was like, okay guys, I'm leaving, I'm moving to Canada, and everyone was like, what are you doing? Like you've got like this pension and this great job and benefits. And I was like, oh sure, I'm just taking a risk. Like why not? Like, and that, I guess, like being like a, you know, a heavy drinker and like a risk taker and all, like that kind of thrill of just going into the unknown kind of really appealed to me. So yeah, we moved over summer, like late August. I moved over late August of 2019. And it was just like myself, my ex-boyfriend, and then some of his friends and one of their girlfriends. And it was just so weird because I literally did not know one person who lived in Canada, who was going to Canada. Like I just like kind of winged it. So yeah, like looking back, I'm like, what was like? Were my parents not like, what are you doing? But they're just like, oh sure, go. Like, you know, you can always come home. And I think I did a couple of summers, and I know you did as well in America. And I did mine in New York, and I loved like North America. There was something so different to Ireland, like, you know, it's so big and all. So I was like, sure, like let's just give it a whirl. And then of course was there 5 months, and then COVID hit. So that was the start of my journey in Canada. Like God love me, like it was a rough start.
The pension job and the security and all that at the age of 26, did you find it enticing, or were other people just telling you it was supposed to be enticing?
That's a good point. I think the job itself I found enticing, but all the like stability stuff I wasn't really bothered about. It was people kind of being like, this is a really good setup. And I guess maybe it's an Irish culture to maybe late 20s, maybe you meet someone, you start to settle down, you start to maybe save towards like having a house or a family or whatever. And so people were kind of seeing that for me, but I was not there. Like I was like, not a fucking hope, like what? So I think like when I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go and, you know, move to another country, when I had like this kind of en route to a picket fence like family life, and then they were all like, what are you doing? Like you're throwing all this away. And I was like, yeah. So I think it was more the type of work that was like enticing to me, like just working with kids who had just come from really difficult like circumstances. And I think it was the first time that I'd ever thought about like my drinking, because I was working with kids who
Before you moved? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was working with kids who had major substance use issues and addiction. And I was going into work like maybe a wee bit hungover on a Sunday, and then I'd be working with these kids, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, you know, it was like kind of like holding a mirror up to myself, seeing them, and then they're like talking about how substances have ruined their lives, and I'm here just kind of like waltzing through it type thing. So yeah, that was really interesting as well.
That's interesting. I know I've never spoke to you about that before, that you're speaking to people who have problems with this substance that you have consumed the night before.
Yeah.
And are still suffering the result, but like, you know, you're fine, you're able to deal with it. It kind of presents this thing that, you know, when people give up alcohol or drugs, that like they must have had a problem.
Yeah.
It was said to me literally yesterday, I don't know anybody, someone said this to me yesterday, I don't know anybody who gives up drink without being a major problem. And I was like, well, that's not true. That was
yeah.
But it does present the idea, and you probably thought at the time, well, these have issues, like these are they need the help that I'm offering, but like I'm not as bad as them. Or am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, and it was more so like we're taking the same substance, but we have different circumstances. So they were coming from like maybe abuse or like poverty, or being surrounded by like other people who are like, you know, engaging in crime and stuff. So it was like I'm going home to like a family and I've got stability, and so it was almost like if my circumstances were different, would I have been in these kind of circumstances? You know, is that my path would have changed? And I think like the thing that was really lovely about it was the first time for a lot of them that they'd been sober for any sort of length of time. So you could see almost they came in and they were these big like lads thinking they were class, or they were coming down off stuff, or they were hungover. And then after a couple of weeks, you could see like the light come back from behind their eyes, and they were almost like kids again. And they got to be excited about, you know, stuff like in sobriety, when you get excited about like the small things, or like they'd be like, oh, we're watching a movie tonight, like what should we pick? And you know, whereas when they first came in, they would just be so focused on like, I need to get that substance, or I need to get out of here, or whatever. And it just gave them a chance to be kids again. And it was like a privilege to get to hang out with the sober versions of themselves, because their own family don't get to do that on the outside, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually profound.
And then like their parents, when their family would come and see them and do visits, and they'd be like, who are you? Like, you know, they'd be like, who are you? This is my little kid again. And then unfortunately, just with the way society is, once they go back out again, it's just back to the same a lot of them, same circumstances, and back in it.
I spoke with a friend of mine at the weekend, just a couple of days ago. We were talking about the ability to live, you know, the quiet life, the peaceful life. Obviously, it's difficult in real life, and living almost a monastic lifestyle. He spent weeks, if not months. I think he spent up to 9 months in a rehabilitation facility where it was quite stringent. You know, it was kind of more militant.
Okay.
Don't think there was any access to phones. Wear very similar clothes every day. Chores to do, that type of thing. Make your bed. You know, very much, and no access to media outside of. If they had a phone, it was to make a phone call to someone. It was not to
very intentional
check what's going on in the world. And he spoke about that and said, you know, it's very hard to recreate in real life, but you kind of get used to it after a while. But I kind of wanted to ask him, what was it like then adjusting to real life afterwards? Because obviously that's quite difficult, but that's maybe a conversation for another. That's kind of more your career based. But are you still involved in that kind of work now that you live here in Canada?
Yeah, it was hard to get, because one of the things I had actually heard when I was doing a bit of research about coming over was it's very hard in social work, and maybe other fields as well, to get Canadian experience when you don't have Canadian experience.
Yeah, the catch-22 situation.
So it was so difficult. So when I first moved over, I was obviously like a bit, like, maybe grieving is a bit dramatic, but I was quite sad to be leaving that job, because I really, really loved it. And I think I was like, okay, well, I'm going to a massive city. Hopefully there's like similar work. I was looking into like the prison system there, and the prison system here, but it's so different. So like back in Ireland, we would get to wear, like, I could wear this to work. Yeah. Whereas here it's like a
tracksuit now, just for
like
for reference.
So I'd be wearing like trackies and a hoodie, and like when I first started working there, like I was 24, and there were a couple of occasions where like the new staff who didn't know me yet would be like, "Here, why are you on your own?" Thinking I was like a young person, yes. And I'd have to be like, "Here are my keys, like I work here," like Jesus, because you're not allowed to go around by yourself as a young person there. But here it's like way more, the kids are like adults. So it's like the prison guards in their uniforms and stuff, and that's just not the kind of work that I wanted to do. I wanted to, like, in Ireland, it's far more, in the south and the north, it's far more child-centred and like care-focused.
Interesting.
Yeah, whereas...
There's always this, sorry to interrupt you, there's always this assumption in Ireland that Canada's ahead of us in everything.
Yes.
I don't know if you noticed
yes,
that, but
yeah.
I always thought that, yeah. But sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, but like there is, but so that's why it is very strange. Like it's almost like a children's home in Ireland, like a secure, like children's home, like where, you know, and even to the point where like one of the guys, I was bringing him in and we did his intake and we went into the cell and I, you know, I popped him in and I was like, right, I'll be back later, and closed the door, and he rang the bell immediately and was like, there's no door handle. And I was like, yeah, and he's like, how do I get out? And I was like, oh God, no. Like, so we had, you know, things like that, because it doesn't feel like a prison. Whereas I know that here it's a lot more like serious looking and very maybe them and us kind of. So I was like, right, I have to pivot here. So I didn't want to do that. So I was trying to look for work and I just couldn't find anything. I sent so many applications. It was actually really disheartening. And I was kind of like regretting coming over. You know, I was like, right, I've just given up a job, moved over, and now I can't get anything, and I'm gonna have to work in like something that maybe I won't be able to pay rent
to pay bills, just to get by,
to like be scraping through. So I finally was able to. I think that the recruiters here are really, really helpful, especially for people first coming over. Like, so I was able to get like a contract job through a recruiter. And I was like so random. I was like a receptionist for like a building. Like
I didn't know this.
Oh, if you can imagine, for like a mall. So on Bain College, that big mall is there.
We live right there.
Yeah. So we were the property management company, and I was the secretary. Yeah. For like a year or so. And you know what? My manager was an Irish girl, and she actually gave me it. So I was being a secretary, and my contract basically ran out, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to leave because whatever. And she created this like marketing role for me, and just went, I know you don't have any experience. We're just gonna. I know that you're well able. I'll give you a shot. And it was just like that connection, and her just giving me a chance. So she actually created a permanent job for me in that organization.
That's incredible.
So then I was doing marketing, and I've never done a stitch. I know,
that's the negative of it, of course, yeah.
I was like, I've never done a stitch of this in my life, but like, you know,
it's worked well for you.
I was sitting in these meetings talking about like, you know, what we should do for the signage outside the building and all. What do you think? And I was you know, like, what am I doing?
Do you think you would have had the courage to do something that's not your quote unquote area of expertise back home?
No, absolutely not. I would have been like, no. And you know, a lot of my experience back home was actually working in like retail of like, you know, Asda, Sainsbury's, all those like big supermarkets. So I was probably more gravitating towards that, and that's where I was looking for jobs and stuff until I found that recruiting one, because I was like, there's no way. And it was just lovely, especially having like an Irish woman like just believing in you a wee bit and being like, sure, you're well able, like you've done all this, and you're like, because we're so quick to put ourselves down and be like, oh no, I can do that. But I think there is like a confidence in Canada, like maybe it's like a North American thing of just like going for it and like just putting yourself forward, and it was easier to maybe put yourself forward, and the fear of rejection was less, or the fear of failure was less, because it was people that don't know you.
I was just going to say, the anonymity over here is fantastic. I'm overly involved in the Irish community at times, and I feel like there's obviously a lack of anonymity there. You know, people, it almost feels like home sometimes. But outside of that, when with work, with even clothes I wear, I'm not the most eccentric character, but sometimes I'll wear clothes that I wouldn't wear at home, which is sad. It's sad to admit that probably, but I would, and it's because there's no fear of people rejecting you or deciding that you're beneath them because you're wearing these clothes or because you have this hobby or whatever it might be. Whether that's true or not anymore in Ireland, I don't know, but I definitely I feel a sense of release when I come here, so I'm glad and you probably have felt that in multiple facets of your life as well.
Yeah, and even when you were saying that, I was just thinking, I remember I went to New York and I bought like this hat on one of my summers, and it was like like a black, like, I don't even know, like, not a cowboy hat, but something. I went home and I tried to wear it in my hometown, and then, like, I went into, like, the local pub, and the barman was, you could just see that he was immediately just, like, the cut of her, and he was just like, all right, Indiana Jones, and I was like, do you know, and it was just like, all right, you try and, like, put yourself out there, but people at home, it's funny, because it's just a bit harder here. Such a big place and so many different types of people that people are just gonna look different and move differently anyways. So it's easier just to like
be different.
Just try, just like not care. Like the outfits I wear when I walk river, especially in winter time and stuff. Like it's just like, do you know what? And I really enjoy that. I feel like I would have been very self-conscious and like scundered.
Yeah.
And
what does scundered mean?
Like pure embarrassed, like about what people would think of me, and now I'm just like, do you know what, like, and that carries, like, when I do go home, I try and bring that same energy, and just like, even, you know, my mum and my sister visited, and my mum would be saying stuff like, oh, I can't wear that, and all, and I'm like, Mum, you wear whatever you want too, like, come on, like, you know, don't be worrying.
I had 2 stories, and I won't name the people involved, but they were, well, actually I kind of will for one of them. One of them went to, we used to have these non-uniform days in school.
Yeah.
So you pay €1 or €2, it would all go to charity, and everybody gets to wear their regular clothes.
Yes.
And one lad wore a pair of golf pants one year, and his nickname to this day is Pants. Pants. It's not even in any way original, you know. It's ridiculous. And then, what was the other story? Recently, a friend of mine went travelling with his brother, who they don't travel with too frequently. They went to London, I think, and my buddy, who lives here in Toronto, had a water bottle, the simplest of things in the world, and was going to bring it from the hotel room out, and his brother said, you're not bringing that, like, out, would you? Yeah? A water bottle. You know, because it just was inconceivable to him that you would do something in any way different. And I just, look, they're unusual examples, but it's the kind of, I don't know, I when I go home, I still sometimes do fall back into am I being different? So I, like, intentionally try and have like a stronger accent when I go home and things. Your accent is still quite strong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Has it changed much?
I don't think so, though. It is. It's hard because there's a couple of things, like, do you know, like lift instead of elevator.
Yeah.
That just out of ease, like, I do really try and like stick to like the language that I would use at home. But there's some words that, like, you're like, okay, I know that it's just people are gonna be like, what are you talking about? Yeah. So there's been a couple of times I'd go home and it would be more like I'd say, oh, sure, we'll just jump in the elevator, and my dad's like, what will we do? Like, absolutely, and you're like, but in terms of my actual accent, like, I feel
the vocabulary changed, but the accent didn't.
And and honestly, I think that a big part of that was when I went to uni in England, and I absolutely despised it. I went to Bristol simply based off the fact that that's where Skins was based.
For university.
And I thought I was like, I'm gonna have this pure edgy experience and all, but I went to the wrong uni. I went to University of Bristol, which is like the posh one, and it was not that. So they used to kind of take the piss out of me a lot about my accent, and
because you were different, or because you were from Ireland?
They saw it as like as if I were a commoner. So I'd be asked stuff like they'd be like, oh, did you get a wee scholarship to get in here? And I'm like, no, I just did my A-levels, like, well. And then they'd just be like baffled because they all went to private school, and they were like, so you just went to like a public school and then went here? And I was just like, what? So it was myself and my friend, she's from Northern Wales, and she has a very strong accent too, and they just thought that we were just these like aliens. So then we both, instead of being like, oh, let's try and like fit in, we went, let's crank this up a notch and make our accents like the pure strongest. Like, I was like, I'm not being ashamed of this.
Yeah, good.
So because we had each other, it was way easier, but there was a lot of like jarring stereotypes. Like, they'd be shouting like potatoes at us, and they'd be putting on like a kind of like, you know, the most like sing song, nothing like my accent, like just you know. And God love them. It was interesting as well, especially being from the north and then going to England, and then English people, you know, some English people not having a clue about Irish history when England was such a big part of it, or, you know.
Yeah, I know.
So like, for example, like they were asking me how I'm able to use my phone in England, and I'm like, well, the north is you know, like
Yeah.
it's the same. Okay. Or when I was having some friends to visit, and they were like, they got their watch out, and they were like, right, are you an hour ahead or behind?
That's incredible.
And it was like, what is it? Like, do you know when you're just like,
yeah, to be that ignorant.
and it was a really weird feeling to, like, that has occupied so much of our history and our life growing up, but when a lot of people just don't know what you're talking about, and it's like,
I know that you can tell. You can tell a brief, insight into British history without having to mention Ireland, but you can't obviously do that the opposite way around. You have to talk about Britain when you talk about Ireland.
exactly.
I think it's, yeah. I've in fairness, I've met a lot of people. At the start, I was angry as well when I used to meet. I remember I met a few English people in university, and I couldn't comprehend how. But then, as I've gotten older, you meet people, and the majority of people, if they're ignorant, they're apologetic about it. They would like to know more. So it has improved. But obviously in university that must be a tough situation to go into.
And just the university I was in, where it would have been maybe a lot of people who, I don't want to say sheltered, but maybe would have had quite privileged lives, so maybe just wouldn't have come across people for, or like learnt about the history. And it wasn't so much that. That was just more interesting for me. I didn't really get like, upset about it. Like, I'm not it's not their fault or whatever, but it was more, I felt the perception of Irish people as being poor or not as intelligent as English people or someone who's gone to private school, or also the massive stereotype that all Irish people are just like idiots who drink too much, and they almost like tried to make me like the clown of the group.
Did you ever live up to that expectation?
Oh, I absolutely lived. That's the one thing that's the one thing, unfortunately, that I lent into, because I guess it was a massive coping mechanism of just like dealing with everything, and I was like, do you know what? It's easy to just be that person and be the the green light guy. And
what's the green light guy?
So if people are like, oh, should we get mangled? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I'll always say yeah, so I'll always hit the green. I'll always say...
So then people are inclined, if they want to go on the piss, to ring you.
Yes.
Yeah, I had friends like that too. I hope I wasn't that friend for them, but I might have been as well, yeah. Yeah, no, I get it.
I would never say no. Even if it was not great.
Did you drink in... Did you guys call it secondary school or high school?
Secondary school.
Did you drink in secondary school?
So, I was like, I had maybe like a trigger warning for, eating disorders. So I had like maybe when I was like 15, I developed like a exercise obsession / eating disorder, where I would just not eat enough and I would exercise like for hours. So I don't know, I read somewhere or something that drinking was like loads of calories, so I was like, absolutely not. So we would go out to like the clubs or whatever, and I would just be sitting there with my water, like so awkward, so miserable. They'd be like, here, have a Coke. And I'd be like, Coke? No! I'd be like, no, I have to get up for the gym in the morning, no. And I was so disciplined, but obviously in a very harmful, unhealthy way. And I find those situations, I obviously didn't make it easy for myself, because I drank water and I was very uncomfortable, and I was very like, I didn't try and have fun sober. I kind of almost like white knuckled it. And then I guess, I don't know how it came about, but maybe one day I heard that if you drink like vodka and water, it's not that bad or something.
Oh, yeah.
So then I started on that, and then honestly, just that, like, maybe when I was like 17, and having that like release of like, oh, I can just not care about anything, was so, because I was always a person that cared about everything. So just like having that first like drink or couple of drinks, and it just, everything just melting away, was just powerful. So I then became, because I kind of started off drinking something so strong and that I wasn't eating properly, often, more times than not, when I would go out, I would be just like passed out, or like from 0 to 100 pretty quickly. It wasn't like a gradual thing, it was just like kind of straight in to like the extremes.
Which is probably like a lot of young people probably start off drinking beers or ciders and lower alcohol stuff, whereas vodka and water, was it?
Yeah.
Was your first vodka? Yeah. Is your first drink?
Rough.
It's disgusting, I would assume. Yeah. Is straight away it's hard. It's hard. I remember being at we had a dietitian come in and speak to our hurling team years ago, and someone asked the question: if we were to drink alcohol, what would be the best alcohol to drink, the healthiest? Which was a ridiculous question, and it puts the dietitian in a tough position to answer. And he answered very well. I thought he just said, because there are these myths, and people maybe I see some of the professionals drink gin, maybe that's low on calories, and he just said alcohol is based on the percentage and the strength of the alcohol. So in terms of calories and stuff, if you're drinking a spirit, for example, that's less, it's a higher alcohol percentage, you're obviously drinking less of it, but there's higher calories per, it's more calorific, if it makes sense. You obviously just don't drink as much of it as you would drink a pint.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I was like 23 or 4, and that was the first time I made that distinction. Oh yeah, obviously. And I just couldn't, But anyway, my point is, because I had these myths as well about, we used to have a coach that would only allow us drink beers on nights out. We weren't allowed to drink spirits. I don't know how you could create a rule around that, but this was the kind of, because spirits were bad,
Well, I guess that's flipping safer, and it's just, and maybe I've never actually thought about this, but maybe that's why, younger girls, when they're starting out drinking or whatever, are drinking these really strong drinks because they're less calories, but they're knocking the complete bag out of them.
Yeah.
Like when really, like if you were trying, like, a beer, or as you said, a cider, something that's like you can sip on over time. But because there's this pressure, especially for women, to not be drinking like calorie heavy stuff, that we're drinking stuff that's like rocket fuel.
Yeah, rocket fuel. Yeah, 100%. Especially women, actually, because obviously men get into drinking spirits as well. But I found my group, there was a lot of beer and cider, and that was, not only was it what you started off with, but you kind of persisted with it for a while because it looked masculine.
Yeah,
it looked unusual for women to drink a pint of Guinness or a pint of Heineken or whatever it might be. So spirits were the way to go, for a female. So, and that lends itself into its own trouble. I'm curious. I have a quote in my phone that I look at sometimes. I just have it written down. I don't even know who said the quote. But it just reminds me, if I ever get the urge to drink, it says drinking is a dissatisfaction with the way you are currently feeling, whether that's good or bad. So I had this narrative in my head that I drank to feel good. But oftentimes it was to drink to accentuate a good feeling that I already had. But what it actually did was change that good feeling. Oftentimes, obviously, in the long term, making it worse. Short term, making it perceptually better, at the time. But definitely different. But of course, there's times then where I drank to make myself feel better, having previously felt worse. Either way, it was dissatisfaction or an inability to be able to deal with the feelings. This past weekend, I just told you off air that I had a very emotional weekend and emotional couple of days, and I'm still struggling with that a little bit. I'm so grateful for the fact that I don't drink to be able to feel the negative stuff as well.
Yeah.
My question to you, I don't know why I started drinking. I've never really found that. When you look back at your 17-year-old, you spoke about it there a little bit, but what was the reason for drinking? What kind of?
I think there's a number of reasons. One of them, as I touched on, was I felt like I didn't have any control, or maybe my way of having some kind of control in my life was being so strict on myself with my eating and my exercise, and it became out of control. And I think with drinking allowed me to not even care about control, so just give up control completely.
It's very similar, yeah.
Yeah, to the point where I'm like, fuck, if I end up I would end up in the most rare places, I probably didn't reflect as much the next day of why am I doing this, but I just remember that I don't want to say cured, because it didn't cure it. It just shifted. My eating disorder morphed into an alcohol use disorder, or binge drinking.
Yeah.
And I think another part is I've never, and I think it's just because of the way my brain works. I'm a very sensitive person. I felt I never felt like I properly fit in anywhere. And I think like even in my friend group, I have some like long-term really good friends, but I think whenever we were in like a group, I just was like, I just can't, there's something missing here. Like I could see people all doing what like teenagers are supposed to do, and I just felt like I was living on another planet. And I and I think alcohol allowed me to like fit in, and people would then be like, oh yeah, like come out with us, or I wasn't aware of the awkwardness.
Yeah.
Like, so if I was being a fucking header, or like, and I would say some like weird, because I'm so socially awkward sometimes. See, if I'm not comfortable around people, I'll like say all sorts of mad shit, and they'll be like, what is this fucking girl? Whereas, so it's, when I'm uncomfortable, I can't be myself, and then I feel like when I was drinking, I didn't care if people thought I was weird or not, because I didn't remember.
Yeah.
And it was also a good reason for people not to like me. So if I felt people didn't like me or I didn't fit in, I could be like, oh, it's because I drank too much and that's the reason. Even though that doesn't make it feel better, it's still better than them just not liking me because of who I am.
Okay.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is a tough podcast for me to not interrupt you all the time because I resonate so much.
Yeah,
with it.
Please do.
I had disordered eating. I have disordered eating. I'm constantly dealing with it. It's improving all the time, but it rears its head every now and again. And sometimes I struggle. I'm open enough with the drinking thing. I'm not very open with the disordered eating thing. I don't know why. I'm open to certain people, but not as public.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because it doesn't come up as often.
Yeah.
Which is a bit weird. You would think it would come up more frequently because we eat more than we drink generally. But my point is it was a control thing as well. Yeah, so I totally get the idea of, well, fuck it, we're pressing the button now. Whatever, it's Friday or whatever, doesn't matter what day it is sometimes. And I used to actually binge eat while I drank actually. Because of it, which is unusual. People, and it was physically it messes with you a small bit as well. But I don't want to get into specifics. People are different. I just do resonate a little bit with that, and the idea of fitting in.
Before you go into that, I just want to say I think that a part of that is because, although drinking being damaging is still. Like, we're still, like, getting, there's still, sobriety is kind of, people are talking more about it, but, like, it's more common to share about, like, oh, I was hungover, oh, I did this. Whereas, like, I think, like, with eating, it is so deeply personal, and there's still a lot of, like, diet culture and this, like, rise in, like, people using, like, Ozempic and like that. It's still very... People are scared maybe to talk about it because it's so sensitive, whereas drinking's maybe a little bit easier because people can relate to being like, oh yeah, like, because you're, people would talk about being hungover quite openly.
That's true, yeah. Whenever people ask me why I gave up drinking, I've had different ways of approaching how to answer that question, depending on the individual. Sometimes I will ask them, surely you've thought at least once in your life, maybe I shouldn't have drank last night. And they'll say, oh yeah, of course, you're hungover, So they're like, okay, I get that, yeah, it doesn't feel, people understand.
Yeah.
I've rarely told, when people say I'm hungover, you'd rarely hear someone, wow, you know what I did yesterday? I didn't eat, or I ate so much I got sick, or ate so much I wanted to get sick, ate so much I made myself get, whatever it might be. That's something people don't unfortunately talk about out loud.
And do you know what? That's another reason why I think I shifted into drinking, because I found drinking to be more socially acceptable.
Oh yeah.
Than withholding food from myself. Because in school, people would be on my fucking shit. Sorry, I keep swearing a lot. But people would be on my case for like, where's your lunch? Where are your sandwiches? Did you throw them out? And it would be so triggering. Yeah. Whereas like, if I got wasted on the weekend, no one cared. So I was almost like, okay, this is a more socially acceptable coping mechanism. The other one, people were putting more stress on me. This one I can kind of get away with more.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. How do we fast forward and end up with you not drinking? What happens in between? How long is the answer to this question?
How long do you have? Well, I think it did kick off. I had a kind of series of partners who maybe didn't know how to, and I guess like, Irish culture, a lot of people drink too much, and I had a couple of partners who maybe I'm not trying to blame them. I'm just, they enabled me a bit, and they kind of maybe didn't know how to deal with it and just kind of let it happen. And then when I met my ex, who I moved to Canada with, he was a lot more kind of like trying to understand like why it was happening and like helping it not to happen. And, those awful conversations where you wake up the next morning and you're like, you don't have any memory, and you kind of turn around and you're like, morning, like, are you annoyed at me? I can't remember. And then they're like, we need to talk. And you're like, oh no. Those kind of situations, which in the moment are like very difficult, but do start to get you thinking. And I think like that, plus the accumulation of like the working in the prison and seeing the kids and having kids, like, I don't know, for me anyway, when I was hungover, it would impact me for the week. My mood would be down. And I'd have some of the young people being like, sir, are you alright? And I'd be like, oh, no. Like they'd be like noticing, like clocking it a mile off, and then I'd be like, I can't, like, what am I doing? So when I moved to Canada, couldn't get a job, was working as that secretary, and in an organisation with like people like who were, I maybe didn't gel with. I didn't really have any friends outside of like the little group, and I found it very, very difficult. I felt like I'd lost my identity a wee bit. And I think that's when like I started like drinking more just to try and cope. And it was just a bit like miserable, for me, a lot of the time it was, and I think this was always harder when you know better and you still do it anyway, because when you're drinking, like, you don't really have control over your brain in those all the things that you're like, I know I shouldn't do this, I know, and then you just do it, and you wake up the next morning, and when you've been trying to make effort to change, and then you do the same stuff that you've always done.
I think I was the first person to we had a discussion years ago, and I used the phrase cognitive dissonance because I'd only just learned it, and I spoke to you about it, and you did the look that you just did there, and you're like, I've had that happen so often, where I know I want to stop drinking, but I didn't last night, or I didn't a week ago, and the feeling I have, even as you're doing it and post doing it, this disagreement with yourself, it's nearly, I almost used to wish for the time that I was blissfully ignorant about the fact that I didn't care. I knew it was doing damage to my body, but I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas then when you know, it's hard to change. Yeah, so sorry, I remember that. I remember talking to you about cognitive dissonance because I just heard about it. It happens in all walks of life, but particularly with drinking, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like, waking up and hearing, because obviously the control thing, yeah, great, I don't have any control, but then waking up and having to hear from people things that you've done, or how you've spoken to people, or how you've treated yourself, and having to like, people could say, oh yeah, you Tarzan swinged through Toronto, and I'd have to just take their word for it, because I'd be like, oh, like, I can't remember. And blackouts were like so common for me, like from maybe 8 p.m. till the next morning, blacked out.
It's a huge amount of time to lose.
Scary. And one of the scary things would be often, like, obviously people like my ex could tell with my voice and stuff, but people who didn't really know me, sometimes they would just think that I was like, but really I was on autopilot. Like the lights were on, there was no one home, like I was just gone. So I think it got to a point where I was just sick of like letting myself down and letting down the people that I loved around me, and just like saying that I was going to do it, because I hate that. Like, usually, and now I can say this, if I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. And I think that that's when you're struggling with a substance or whatever that has control over your brain, like, you lose control of your brain when you're drinking, because it's mind altering. The really disappointing thing is you can have the best intentions in the world, but as soon as you're doing that, you just can't. You can't, like. Yeah, it was very frustrating. I could say I'm gonna only have 3 drinks tonight, and then I would be like, I had 13.
Yeah. And
it was just like, and I didn't drink spirits, like, towards the last few years I was drinking like pints and stuff, thinking I was a big lad, like. When really, like, I was only a wee waif drinking, like, sinking the pints, like, but yeah, it got to a point where I was just sick of just letting myself down and saying I would do something and not doing it and not following through, and then I was like, who even am I? Because, like, I don't really I can't even trust myself anymore. There was just no trust left with me. So then it came to Christmas, and my family actually came to New York City for Christmas, the first time that my parents were ever in North America. So their only like wish was to have like a hot dog from like the stand. But that Christmas I didn't drink on Christmas Eve because I was like, there were a couple of days that I chose not to drink, and that's the first time ever, because I was like, if I start drinking, I don't know how this is going to end, so I'm going to not, in order to like cherish this time with my family. And then it got to New Year's, and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to run a marathon, or a half marathon maybe at that point. And I was like, I'm going to start training. I'm going to, I feel like I was like, something's got to give here. And then 3 months later, COVID hit. But during COVID, there were a lot of periods where, and I don't know if you did this as well, but before I quit, I did periods of abstinence.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Which I found so helpful to just really build up, and kind of almost prove to yourself that you can do certain things without drinking, like ski trips. And, I did dry January, and then I did a ski trip, and then I did 100 days, and I was like, oh, look, I can do all sorts of stuff. And then I still wasn't ready to quit. But I think that was really, changed a lot in me.
Yeah. I was lucky, I suppose, from playing sport to have had embedded periods of time where I didn't drink, so I had to go to, but also it always felt like an obligation. So to make the choice yourself to not drink for yourself was a new thing for me during the pandemic, kind of, where I intentionally made a decision to not drink in order to better myself or feel better about myself, and then to which was it. Yeah, I can empathise with you a small bit there, but it definitely did help. I'm curious, during those periods of abstinence, and then when you went back drinking for a night, what was that like?
Oh, so the periods of abstinence. So I think the reason why I did dry January, for example, because of this health thing. It was like, I was like, I'm gonna, and that's sometimes what I need. I need like that focus. I'm gonna run the half marathon, so I'm gonna do that. And then when COVID hit, I knew myself, and I was like, if we're locked down, away from home, struggling, I was like, I can't drink. Because like, when do you stop? Like, when it's just the rollover then, so I was like, I can't. So I did like a big chunk of time, and then it kind of got towards summer, and I was like, okay, like this is going to be perfect. Like a few Coronas on Toronto Islands, like powerful. It was like Canada Day, and I was like, let's go. And I had like the first Corona, and I remember being so disappointed. I think I thought it was going to be like the first drink I ever had, and it just flopped, and it made me feel really tired and sluggish. And it was almost like when you're used to not drinking, and you're used to like being so aware, your body and your brain are like connected, and you're aware, okay, I'm feeling really tired, or I'm feeling really energetic or whatever. And then drinking that, I was almost like, I could feel like I was putting something in my body that was changing the chemistry of it, and I really didn't like it. And I was like, flip, like if I felt like this way back when, it would have like, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I don't like that actually.
But the abstinence helped you make that distinction.
Yeah. Like, but instead of being like, oh, I don't like that, I was like, oh, I'll just have 10 more and then I'll be fine. And then honestly and that's the scary thing about habits, that once you return to it and you then like kind of force yourself to get back into it, it's as if I never left. And then I was like, okay, back to the normal drinking habits, back to the same stuff that I was doing a year before. And it was like, no. Yeah. So that was really frustrating.
I was going to get to this at the end of the conversation, but there's kind of this theory about, why did you go up drinking? Did you have a problem? And what is a problem? And blah, blah, blah. And you're very honest. And, if someone were to go onto your Instagram page and maybe didn't want to give up drink themselves, they might look at your page and say, wow, like she had a problem. Yeah. Because you're so open about it. When most people the average Irish drinker, I would say, has, similar kind of stories that sound, if you were to speak to someone from a culture that doesn't drink, I'm thinking somewhere like India, they would say, that sounds problematic. Yeah. But we all make a distinction what is problematic and what isn't. My point is that, do you think did you ever want to be a normal drinker, a good drinker, whatever that
100%. That was my dream. I was like, why do I have to be different?
What was the ideal drinker you wanted to be?
I'd love to, like...
Because I had my ideal drink. Go on, what was yours?
I'd love to be, like, the one who goes to the pub and sinks 10 pints. And even though that's already problematic.
I thought you were going to say someone who has a glass of wine with dinner.
Oh,
and
no.
that's it.
Oh,
no.
no.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I don't. So maybe it's because of my brain is like all or nothing. I wouldn't even see the point of having a glass of wine.
Yeah, me and you were very similar.
So my dream would be that I go to the pub and I sink 10 pints and I'm the best crack. And I just sit back and like I'm smiling and just taking it all in. And then I go, right, boys, bedtime. And then I take myself home, which never, ever happened. And like I just
and then you go training the following day.
Yeah, and then I go and do a half marathon the next morning. But I think like for me, an element of that kind of shows me is a big part of drinking was like wanting to fit in and wanting people to think like, oh, she's some crack, and like, you know, I like enjoy hanging out with her. And I remember there was a couple of times in uni where I would have gotten mangled and people would have the next day like pulled me aside and been like, you're so great when you're sober.
Oh,
and like I wish that you believed that, like, because when you're drunk and without being like, but they were like, you're a mess, and I'm just like, I don't like, and then I would just cut them out. So instead of like taking that, I would just be so embarrassed about like falling asleep or being sick or whatever that I would just never speak to them again, instead of like taking what they were saying and trying to like, because I was just not ready. But yeah, so that's my normal. It's not even normal, but that's what I wish.
Ideal. I said normal, then I changed it to ideal.
Ideal,
my ideal drinker is the same. Because a lot of people, they want to moderate. We listen to a lot of podcasts where they're like, oh, I tried moderation. I wanted to be, you know, that. I never tried moderation. I wanted to be, my ideal drinker was someone, and to be honest, for a long time, I was my ideal drinker. I could go off the beer for a few weeks, possibly months, go back on it, and still have an okay tolerance level. You know, it seemed that way.
Yeah.
That I was able to drink, you know, it seemed like I was able to drink a good bit and never do anything crazy, blah, blah, blah. That's just a narrative. There was loads of nights where I felt like I wasn't able to, that tolerance wasn't there, or I did do something that I didn't agree with. You know, whether someone else agrees with it or not, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, whether it's, you know, so it doesn't matter. But my point is just that, we kind of, and I kind of flirted with that a little bit during COVID, but eventually I had to settle on not drinking completely. When do you think you made that? The day we're sitting in your apartment, I'm looking at your wall and there's a big, massive happy sober-versary across the wall, which is great to see. Your sober birthday, whatever way you want to call it, did you know that day you were never going to drink again? Or was it just one of a number of times you thought you were never going to drink again?
Do you mean after I did a year?
Well, I'm saying, like, when was the day you stopped drinking.
Oh, sorry.
Did you know that day you're never going to drink again?
Oh, no.
Or, okay, interesting.
Yeah. Oh, so it's almost like, I would compare it maybe so some people might understand. It's almost like a breakup where it's too painful to say we'll never get back together. So you say maybe in the future, and you kind of put it out of your head, and you can, like, you know, for some people, for other people, like for me, I need to be more like, sometimes it's very helpful to be like, that's it, done, like closure, but it takes a wee while to get there sometimes. So when you're starting out, so when I was starting out on like I'm going to quit for a bit, I said I was going to do a year. So, and then by the time it got to the end of that year, I was like, I'm okay. I'm not going to do it again. And that's the same with breakups or with, you know, friend breakups or anything, like maybe even like a job or coming to Canada. Like I was like, okay, I'll try a year and then we'll see. And then over time you do let go and close the door on stuff. But I couldn't have quit if someone was like, you can never drink again. I would have been like, I can't do it then. Yeah. I think it would have been too all or nothing, and I would have just kept thinking about the future and like, but what about that? And I just needed to focus on like an achievable amount of time. Yeah. A year was the longest I would have ever done.
Here's a huge amount of time.
And I like that year was massive for me. Like it was a lot happened. Like I had, you know, the week after I quit drinking. So I decided, so the year I quit was 2022, and I had, like my ex and I had broken up like quite officially, and I'd moved out of like our apartment together, which was very hard because, you know, we came to Canada together and we had like a lot of our life together, and then to move out by myself in a country that I didn't really want to go to in the first place, and I was a bit like, what am I doing here? But it never occurred to me to move home. I was almost like, no, let's just prove to myself that I can get through this year. So the first week I'd moved into a new place. I just turned 30. I was living with this woman who was a hatter. God, and she, you know, she'd be making all sorts of comments, and then I lost my job, so I got laid off. So that was rough, and then it was going into the winter, so it was just like hard. And then 6 months in, my mum had a stroke. On my sixth month, like sober milestone, she had a stroke, and I knew something was wrong because she'd always remember, and I didn't hear from her. It's because she was in hospital. And it was almost like I just felt like, is the universe trying to like throw everything at me to be like, what about this? What about this? And I just never caved. I was like, no, this is hard, but like, what's alcohol going to do? Make it worse? Like, nah, I'm all right.
Yeah.
And because I set a year, and when I'm sober, I stick to my word. So because I was like, I'm doing a year and I will get there. Even if I get to a year and I want to drink, all right, but I will get to that year.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah.
And now we're nearly 3. Yeah, now we're nearly. I know I can never stop at one, so we're nearly 3 years later on Friday.
So it'll be 3 years this Friday.
Yeah.
Is that what the soberversary is for?
I've had that up since since the first year. It's a nice wee reminder.
I love it. Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm on like Teams calls and they're like trying to look, and I'm like, no, like we don't need to.
I'm part of a gratitude group where we say what we're grateful for every day, and there's a little part of me that wants to say I'm grateful that I don't drink every day. Like, I don't do that every day because I don't want to annoy people in the group.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, but it's true because, and you know what? Before I joined the gratitude group, I think I forgot about it. I took it for granted.
Yeah.
I got comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so me and you celebrated my 1,000 days sober a while ago now.
That's
Nearly
great.
2 years ago.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know, yeah. So it's coming up to, it'll be 2,000, I will be 2,000 days sober in May of next year. And I've written into my calendar in my phone so it doesn't pass me by accidentally.
Yeah.
What scared me writing it in was, I know I'm going to get there and I'm going to celebrate that day. But I'm like, which is great to have that confidence. But I'm very thankful. I haven't had much trauma in my life and haven't had too many stuff has happened, of course, that would make you want to I say have a drink. I've changed that phrase from having a drink to get pissed because I know everyone to have a drink. So
yeah.
Stuff has happened that would make me want to get pissed. But thankfully I'm just confident in myself, but I don't want to take it for granted, basically is what I'm saying. So I do appreciate the fact that there was a time when it was a struggle. It's thankfully not anymore. But just feeling the feelings now and going through all this stuff, like what has changed for you since you don't drink anymore?
I guess like a lot, like everything. I guess I've kind of had to come to certain realizations. Like, for example, I'm like massively introverted, and some people wouldn't know that because I'm very good at like masking and pretending that I'm like, sweet, but really on the inside I'm like dying, and especially in big social situations, like my worst nightmare. Whereas like drink would have helped me get through those, whereas now I just wouldn't want to go. And I've had to like really work on my people pleasing because, again, I would have just been like a yes man and just drank and said yes to everything and done like 2 parties in a row and all this. And now I have to really try and not just like listen to myself and be like, I don't want to do that. And like there's some things I'll rally for, like certain friends and events that mean something to people. Like I'll push through even if it's uncomfortable for me or like takes a lot out of me. Because I want to show up for the people I care about, but oftentimes I have to just become more comfortable with just being like no, and realizing that it's not that I used to be more fun. It's because I used to just drink to mask however I was feeling, whether I was sick or tired. You have a few beers and then you kind of forget how you're feeling until the next day, obviously. So there's that, and then also, I think like in terms of like my Irishness, it's always been something that I've struggled with being from the north. So I went to primary school in Bangor, which is like predominantly Protestant, So we didn't learn any Irish, so we didn't learn any kind of language. We didn't play Irish sport. We didn't really have any Irish culture in primary school, even though it was a Catholic primary school. So
That's
then,
fascinating,
isn't it?
in itself? Anyway,
when I look at that now, I'm like, what is? And then when we went to secondary school, then we had to go to.
I presume they just rigidly stuck to the curriculum for some reason.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Didn't learn anything. It was all from my own family that I would have learned things. So then we went to school in Belfast, and it was really annoying because a lot of the sports, camogie and football, they would have wanted you to play in primary school for you to be able to play in secondary school. So we couldn't do that either. So you were
robbed of
yeah.
experiences, yeah.
So I think I never really thought about it because I've never really been shown other people's experiences. But since moving to Canada, there's so many people from all over Ireland here. So I've people whose first language is so it's been a real eye opener for me to be flip that was my my Irish experience was so different. I always felt like I had to prove it, especially being from the north. We have the opportunity to choose whether we identify as Irish or British or both, whatever. So you almost felt like you had to be no, I'm Irish. You had to really prove it. And I think that drinking was such connected me to being Irish. And I was it's something that, I'm Irish, we all drink and I'm part of the stereotype and that kind of way.
Yeah.
And I think quitting drinking, it was scary because it felt like I was losing part of my Irish identity because I don't have any other things that I felt made me Irish, and that was giving up one of them, do you know?
Yeah, 100%. I keep coming back to me, but
no.
I have the hurling and the GAA and the Irish language and all that, so my Irishness wasn't really affected by my alcohol. It is with some people who don't understand my sporting background, but that must have been very tough for you.
Just feeling a bit disconnected, as if someone who's always felt like they're the odd one out, and then being okay, great, now I'm what makes me Irish. And I know that's such a silly thing to say, but it's just when you feel so disconnected with everything else, and then I had to just go, but what is kind of drinking too much and letting myself down, really, does that make me more Irish? That's just, come on, no. So yeah, that was a big part of redefining what it means. And as I said, in university I was very leaning into the stereotype, Irish people are, we're big drinkers, so redefining that and being well, and I've had those comments of when you tell a Canadian fella or whatever, you're sober, and they say, you need to give your passport back. And it's funny because stuff like that for someone in the north is far more deeply triggering because our Irish identity is already threatened in a way. So it's an extra don't joke about that with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of becoming comfortable with it and just being do you know what, that doesn't define me, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter. It should be the least interesting thing about us, what we put into our mouths.
Yeah.
For a lot of situations, it's not. I knew you before you didn't drink, I suppose, but I've known you for longer without drink, and you're an unbelievably open person in private, but also in public. For an introvert, you're actually the stereotypical introvert who, social media has been a blessing to share themselves, because we can remove ourselves from the immediate public scrutiny or judgment, whatever it is, because it's on your phone.
Yes.
Even though it's still difficult to do that, but it's not. It's not. You're not at the town hall telling people stories about your drinking story.
Yeah.
You're doing it on your phone. You can remove it for a couple of hours and check back in with us. Was that just something you wanted to do? It's kind of one of those things people are encouraged to do. Maybe create a sober social media character or profile or whatever it might be. Is that something that you did and then it turned into this big following, or is it something that happened accidentally, organically?
So it's funny because I just want to start off by saying if I still lived in Ireland, I would never in a million years be. So that's why living in Toronto has been such a blessing, because as you mentioned, that like the anonymity, is that how you say it? Like
Yeah.
that it's such a lovely feeling just being like I'm here, like if people at home are kind of being like, what is this girl at? Like I'm so far removed from it doesn't embarrass me, and that's been a real blessing. But no, when I first quit, I actually stopped going on my personal Instagram for 6 months. I felt like so it's so weird to think now, because now I would not care at all, and I don't see that kind of stuff, but I was seeing a lot of people out for drinks and stuff, and that was so triggering because I felt so isolated. And then in my head I was looking, being like, look how connected people are when they're drinking, look how many friends they all have, I'm a loser, I'm on my all this. And I was like, no. So I went off it, and I met up with my friend who's like my first ever like sober friend from Canada, and she was like, why don't you start an Instagram? And I was like, oh no, that'd be like, I would never, like, no. And she was like, maybe it'll help, because I was saying I was 6 months in, and I felt my mum had just had a stroke, and I was just feeling a bit like I wasn't enjoying the sobriety, the pink cloud that they talk about at the start. Well, that was gone. So I was just a bit like, oh. So then she was like, oh no, just start. So then I just went, you know what, I'm going to use it as like an accountability thing, and it really helps me to write stuff down. So I almost thought, like, do you know what, I would love to be that person that I always wished that I had when I was younger, that could see and be like, oh my god, that's exactly how I feel, or that's what I did, or whatever. Because I would like scour the internet to try and find like blogs of people who had similar experiences to me, to feel like I wasn't just a complete header by myself. So yeah, I just started like putting myself out there, and then I don't even know how like things kind of happened, but I just guess it started off quite like, you know, me just being very, very honest, and then as like I started to build like a little bit of a community, I kind of was like, okay, like let's not just spill all the beans here. I need to like, you know, be a bit mindful that this is actually going on the internet, and like these are strangers. So yeah, just kind of, I just try and be as honest as possible. And it's funny because when I think about it, I just think like my younger self would die on the spot if she knew that I was sharing any of this, because my worst fear was people thinking that I wasn't able to drink normally, and them thinking I had a problem, and then me therefore not being able to drink. So I was like, no one can know how much you're struggling. It's like, no.
Yeah.
So now it's so liberating, because I'm like, I don't care. And even in the start, I didn't really want to share in case it burned the bridge to go back.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Of people being like, well, you said you used to do all this kind of stuff, so are you sure you should be drinking again? Now I'm like, I don't care.
I just spoke with a friend of mine who spoke on a podcast about not drinking, and then drank recently. And it's tough. He didn't speak on my podcast, he spoke at a different podcast. Mm-hmm. And he's finding it tough. He's finding the fact that he wanted to drink tough, the fact that he actually drank tough, and now the fact that he has to deal with people who he shouldn't care about, but calling him a hypocrite.
Oh,
which
stop.
is the worst thing. I know,
No.
of course. And of course some of them aren't. His close friends are not,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
That's fair play. Like it must. I would never be able to do what you do. I'd love to think that I would, and then I try and record one selfie video, and I want to smash the phone off the. And that's not about sobriety, about anything.
Yeah.
And I smashed the phone off the wall, but it's unbelievably open. I suppose even when I do the podcast and I talk about stuff and I edit it and I'm listening back and I'm like, oh, like, will my parents listen to this? Will whoever does that? Because strangers, who cares? You know, and you tend, from what I can see, to only get from strangers real positive vibes, people who want to give up drink, and you're an inspiration for them, and it does make you feel great about it. And of course it makes you feel good to share, but also to know that you're helping other people. Have you received much negative feedback or interactions?
Honestly, and very strangely, the only, and maybe to be fair, TikTok is a whole different monster. So if I shared something on TikTok, I get met often with very angry men who are calling me an alcoholic. And that's not something that I don't identify as an alcoholic, but I don't see it as an insult. I'm just like, you're just it's just so obvious that they're trying to like ostracize me because there's something going on with themselves. Yeah. But the only time that I've been met with like a lot of negativity was when I shared about like the struggles that oftentimes women have with like trigger warning as well, like sexual assault and drinking, where again, unfortunately, a lot of men were kind of victim blaming and saying, well, you shouldn't get drunk if you don't want that to happen, type stuff. And I think that's something within the sober community that a lot of people still feel very uncomfortable talking about because it's very sensitive and things like that. So that was hard, obviously, but in terms of like sobriety in general, I think that I think that I'm small enough, my community's small enough to not reach certain algorithms where people would be really harsh and very judgmental and kind of putting you down, because I know a lot of people do have to deal with that who have bigger platforms, and I think that would change how I felt about sharing stuff. Because that'd be hard, because it makes it easy when everyone's just supportive.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Of course, proportionally, the bigger following, you get more people complaining, but you also get more people loving it and wanting that interaction. But it seems like you've a nice. Do you want more people following? Like that's the tough thing, because success in that field, whatever success means, but gaining more followers in that field also means potentially taking on. It's more time consuming.
Yeah, and like. I don't know if I'd be able to balance it. Like even this summer, like I haven't really posted anything in the last 6 months. I've completely fallen off. I just find, because I don't want to do stuff just for the sake of it. I want to like share because it means something to me. But like I would get the odd comment, someone reaching out from somewhere in the world and saying like, look, I went to my first bachelorette party or hen do and I didn't drink, and listening to you or reading your stuff really helped me to do that, and like that means so much, and that makes me be like, okay, let's get back into it. But I think that if I were to grow, I would have to like work wise, because my job at the minute is too heavy for me to balance both. I would have to like make some kind of choice, I think. But I think I love writing, so I would love to commit more to that, but I think it's something that I've always been scared of failing in, so I've never.
Why are you more scared of failing in writing than in social media, for example?
Because I think it's something that I value as a skill.
You don't value the videos you make as a skill.
Myself.
No, I resonate. I write in private and no one gets to read it, and they may never get to read it. I'd love if they did, but the reason they don't is because I would care if I were. If someone thought it wasn't good.
Yes.
Whereas other things I do, making the podcast, for example, I don't give a shit if someone thinks the conversations aren't worth listening to.
That's exactly the same.
Or if I interrupt it too often or whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know why I don't care. I should look into that.
Well, I think making the videos and stuff, like it's just me being like silly, or like, like part of my inner child, just like having fun and like really trying to help train myself not to care what people think so much. So doing something that like I'm not like a passionate videographer, or like I'm not like a comedian. So if that were my job, I might be a bit scundered, but I'm like, if it doesn't land, like it's what. Whereas like writing has always been like, even when I was drinking, I used to have a blog and I would write about all my drunken antics. So it's so funny now that I write about my drunken antics from a sober perspective, as opposed to like trying to make light of myself struggling during that time. But if someone complimented that and said, oh, it was really well written, or it was funny, like that would be like the biggest compliment I could ever receive. And I guess I'm scared in case someone says, no, you're not good enough, and I'm like, okay, at writing.
It might be an identity thing. We spoke about hurling at the start of before we pressed record, and I spoke to you about how sometimes I can feel my identity wrapped up in hurling. So if someone thought I wasn't good at it, I would be hurt. If they thought I wasn't good at even my job, I wouldn't be as hurt.
That's not my.
We just create this narrative, and it's like, I don't know what it is. But as we begin to wind down, I just think that I'm grateful we're kind of doing this roughly around the same time period. There was a time I think you were asking me for like advice, and I felt very accomplished, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I just felt like I was sober and mine was straightforward and stuff. But now you must have helped so many people. It must feel really nice to be helping so many people.
It's especially, it does feel nice, and especially as someone who I couldn't even help myself, and I always just thought that I was gonna, I didn't think I was gonna get sober until I got pregnant and had a family, and then maybe I'd like catch myself on a bit and be like, right, you need to like wise up. But I didn't think I would ever do this for myself or like keep it going and like find peace in it. Like I'd be like, oh, I'm so, but like I love having a good quiet chill life. Like that's my dream. Like as you were saying, River and I just hang out in the gaff. Like I'm an order a takeout if we're gonna splash out. Yeah.
Never leave the apartment without a dog. It's cute as River. But like the introvert thing is interesting because a lot of people who give up drinking or a lot of people who stop drinking seem to figure out that they are introverts or possibly less extroverted than they are.
Yeah.
Whether there's there's obviously a spectrum. I'm like that. People would probably find that they probably wouldn't think that to be the case. But I love the fact that not drinking gives you that ability to leave parties when you want to, not do things that you. Oasis played this weekend in Toronto, and the whole city seemed to have went to us. And someone asked, "Are you going?" And I said, "No." And he just said, "Why?" I could have said, "Oh, I was busy," or "the tickets were expensive." I said, "I don't fucking like concerts anymore since I stopped drinking."
Yeah.
And I don't have to explain that anymore. Like, I only realised that a few months ago. Not that I was going to too many concerts, but I went to enough unnecessarily, and it just gives you that sense of freedom. So now I'm looking at, as opposed to looking at it as a restrictive thing, I'm looking at it going, oh, you can't go to concerts anymore. Thank God. I never liked them. So now I realise I don't like them. Drink was covering up, and it goes back to my previous point about it's a dissatisfaction with where you are currently, with the state you're currently in or how you're currently feeling. That being said, there will be people listening to this who will think that we're two righteous pricks talking about how great our life is without drinking. I know that you and I don't care about that. But to the theme of the podcast is Irish in Toronto. Do you think this would have happened had you stayed living back home?
No.
Okay.
And I think I wish I could say yes, and maybe if something bad enough happened that shook me into it, but I just don't think, or I might have white knuckled it. I know some people that have gotten sober from home, and I think that they're so brave. And like, not to be like, I'm not trying to be patronising or anything. Like I think, like I look at them and I'm like, in Toronto especially, we have events and groups and it's so. It could always be better, but it's very sober friendly compared to maybe like Bangor or some parts of Ireland. And I just think I look at those people who made that decision where they're very much in the minority, and I just think it's so brave. And that's why I love going home, and I love like saying with my chest like, no, I don't drink. And like people like, we went out for dinner, and my mum, this is when you were saying about like you'll confidently get to 2,000 days. I can now say like I'm gonna get to 3 years on Friday. Like maybe there was a time before where I'd have been like, oh, I don't want to. Like whereas I will do it. Like I know I'll do it. So whenever I see my family, we celebrate way before because they're never with me on the day. So we were out for dinner, and my mum had a balloon with 2 on it, and this woman came over. She didn't know me, and she was like, "Oh, what's the 2 for?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm 2 years sober." And she nearly dropped dead because she was like, she was kind of like, what do I say to that? Like, she was almost like, does this mean she's an alcoholic and she was in rehab? And should I say, you could see her brain going, woo. And I just was like, oh, I'm 2 years sober. I don't drink anymore. Like, happy to, like, and my parents were just sitting like chilling. And it's just like normalizing that and being like, yeah, I don't drink. Cool. And yeah, but God love her. She just didn't know what to say to me. And I was like, it's fine. It's cool. I'm proud of it. And I'm like, I'm no longer embarrassed that people are going to think I had a problem, or even if they do think that, like,
you can't control it.
And also, a lot of people have problems with drinking, and not everyone chooses to quit. Like, drinking causes people problems, like, pretty much everyone, really, unless you are that one glass of wine every now and again person, so it's fine, like, I'm happy enough.
I know. I ask everyone this question at the end. What's the future? Where do you think you're going to stay in Canada, in Toronto?
Oh, Jesus. I'm trauma bonded now to I actually, You know, I was talking to Claire the other day. We went for brunch, and we're both winding each other up because we're like, this is hard. Like, you know, when you've spent a formative part of your life in, you know, away from home in a city, and you've built community, and you've, you know, maybe done something for me, like giving up or like quitting drinking and building a home and building stability for myself. I've never had stability from myself ever. So the thought of even moving out of this apartment, I feel like so connected to it. But I'd love to go traveling, and I'd love to then eventually move back to Ireland. I think, you know, I want to finish doing South America. I want to go to New Zealand. I want to go to Southeast Asia. Like, I don't know where I'm getting the money, but you know, I saw a video, and I know it's probably quite stereotypical, but they were asking all these like older people and elderly people, you know, what's one thing you wish you'd done more of when you were younger? And they were like, traveling. Yeah. And I was like, right, that's all I needed to see. Let's go. So I think, you know, living in Canada, I've done my first ever solo trips, and I think I've done 13 countries by myself now.
That's incredible.
Thank you. And I just, many more to come. Like, I've already hit 34, 35, so I want to hit like 40 before 40. COVID kind of screwed me. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I think that's what's next for me. But it's going to be, I don't know when, but it's going to be very, very difficult to leave Toronto, because Canada, getting my citizenship this year, you know, changing as a person and really like getting to know myself and, you know, building friendships here. It's been a massive part of my life, and it's going to be very hard to say goodbye. But we've got that passport, so that's a massive achievement. Yeah. Especially for the girl who didn't really want to come in the first place, and then now I'm here with my passport and my little Canadian flag, and I'm like, happy days. What am I doing? So yeah.
Well, I leave it at that.
Yes. Thank you.
Really hope you enjoyed that chat with Saz. She's an absolute legend, and I wish her a happy 3 years off the sauce. She's been a great friend to me throughout my journey with alcohol, and I appreciate our friendship so much. Once again, all feedback is welcome. You can email me. My email address is in the description of the podcast, or you can find me on social media. It's always lovely getting messages from strangers and talking about the podcast and their stories of what brought them to Toronto. I would still encourage people to download the episodes and to share them with friends and family. Downloads are the easiest indicator for me to gauge how many people I'm reaching with these conversations, so I would really appreciate it. Thanks to Natalie Barbuzzi, who provided the logo for the podcast, and thanks to Shannon Heaton, who provided the music you are now listening to. You'll find all of her music on Spotify. There will be another episode of Irish in Toronto in 2 weeks, and until then, slán go fóill.